Greetings, welcome back to Blackbird News, where we are discussing climate change, above climate change, and things adjacent. And if you see me sweating in this video, it's because it's very, very hot. My temperature app says 99. It says the high today is supposed to be 100. My thermometer outside my door says 109. 109. That's hot. What is the feels like? Well, they say it feels like 99. I say no. Yeah, just another in a long string of very warm days right now in Southern California, and it looks like it's just going to keep on going for a couple more days. So if you aren't aware and you would like to be aware, the CNN climate crisis town hall is going on right now. It's 7 hours long. With not all candidates, 10 candidates. Bernie Sanders' section of the town hall starts at 8:40 Eastern time or 5:40 Pacific time. So that's in about 3 hours. Anyways, I'll link the page if you want the page. I'm sure that all of these segments will probably show up on YouTube. I would hope that they will. I watched a little bit of Julian Castro, and he is very well spoken, and he had lots of good things to say. Obviously, his plan, none of the plans are as serious or far-reaching as Bernie's plan. But I'm interested to see what everybody has to say. Dorian has completely obliterated the Bahamas. It looks like it was Cat 5. I can't seem to get this page right now. Hold on one second. And seems to be moving very slowly up the Atlantic seaboard, extremely slowly. I'm just not going to get this page to load. And yeah, I don't know what's going on. Pardon the interruption. Hold on one second. Let's see if we can do something else, because oh, let's see. All right. Maybe this will work. One offering about Dorian update, the other two offerings about how Trump is so stupid he thought it was going to hit Alabama. Which is stupid. I don't know how relevant, it's super relevant because you have two offerings talking about how Trump thought it was going to hit Alabama. I don't know, whatever. Why do people care? Trump's an idiot. We know he's an idiot. It's proven every single day. So yeah, it's devastating the Bahamas. Operations suspended at Charleston International Airport, South Carolina. Looks like there are evacuations going on. Sorry, this page is just eating way too much energy here. Got too much going on, guys. I'm sorry. Well, I actually don't have that much going on. As I clear my throat. Some lunatic got all up in the comment section today about why do you got to clear your throat so much? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm a human being. And, none of this information is sourced. Okay. All right. So it's just does not want to open this page. I'm sorry. I don't know why. Probably because they're running some kind of live video on that page, and it's just like sucking up way too much bandwidth. So, but we know what's going on. You guys are, I'm sure everybody is following the story. And Bahamas look like they're devastated very sadly. Greta Thunberg had a good tweet about, how many nations have to be obliterated by storms? How many times do we have to see this before we take action? And, absolutely relevant question. How many Cat 5 hurricanes do we have to see? Just devastating cities and countries. And, before people are like, looks like something's going on. I wonder what it could be. So what I really wanted to bring you in this video, besides the pertinent updates, was this latest from Jamail from yesterday. Alaska's sea ice completely melted for first time in recorded history. Even if we can't escape its consequences, it is not too late to escape the mindset that brought us here. That's a quote from Alice O'Keefe reviewing This Is Not a Drill. The country of Iceland has held a funeral for its first glacier lost to the climate crisis. The once massive Ökjökull glacier, now completely gone, has been commemorated with a plaque that reads, "A letter to the future, okay?" is the first Icelandic glacier. That's the shorthand name for it, is OK. OK is the first, or oak, I guess. It's the first Icelandic glacier to lose its status as a glacier. In the next 200 years, all our glaciers are expected to follow the same path. This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you know if we did it. This reality is reverberating across the globe, far beyond Iceland. Even with no literal funeral, when no literal funeral is being held, we are, in a sense, witnessing an ongoing funeral for the world we once knew. July was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth since record-keeping began in 1880. 9 out of the 10 hottest Julys ever recorded have occurred since 2005, and July was the 43rd consecutive July to register temperatures above the 20th century average. In Greenland, scientists were stunned by how rapidly the ice sheet is melting. Stunned. As it was revealed, the ice there was not expected to melt like this until 2070. The melt rate has been called unprecedented, as the all-time single-day melt record was broken in August as the ice sheet lost a mind-bending 12.5 billion tons of water in one day. It is worth remembering that the Greenland ice sheet contains enough ice to increase global sea levels by 20 feet and is now predicted that it will lose more ice this year than ever before. Also, for the first time in recorded history, Alaska's sea ice has melted completely away. That means there was no sea ice whatsoever within 150 miles of its shore, according to the National Weather Service, as the northernmost state cooked under record-breaking heat through the summer. I don't know how you can hear this news or witness this news and, insist that there's no warming or insist that something else is happening other than global warming. I don't know how you explain this one away. Earth. A recent UN report estimates 2 billion people are already facing moderate to severe food insecurity due largely to the warming planet. The other contributing factors are conflict and economic stagnation, but extreme weather events and shifting weather patterns are a large and growing contributor to the crisis, which is sure to escalate over time. Another recent study titled "Adaptive Responses of Animals to Climate Change Are Most Likely Insufficient" showed that many animals are no longer able to adjust quickly enough to the climate crisis, while birds are laying their eggs earlier as temperatures and conditions change, and are doing what they can to coax their chicks to hatch sooner. It is still not enough to keep a pace with the dramatically shifting climate. Many more extinctions are on the horizon. Speaking of, beluga whales in the Arctic are now clearly in a downward spiral toward their demise, due largely to climate crisis impacts, according to another study. Warming waters, lack of food, and pollution are taking their toll on embattled whales. Over the past 20 years, the growth rates have been declining, which means their ability to forage for food is now also compromised. It is interesting to see even mainstream outlets like People magazine now reporting on climate grief, which the medical community has already been doing for quite some time and expects to see a dramatic ramping up of climate disruption-related mental health issues in the future. In Greenland, residents are already traumatized by climate impacts as they are coping with the reality that their traditional way of life are clearly on the way out. Courtney Howard, board president of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, told The Guardian that she believes the climate crisis is causing worsening states of mental and physical health around the world. Says these issues will become some of the most important of our time. Indeed. People will lose their minds, as they already are, lashing out at anybody who's talking seriously about our impending doom. Temperature change is magnified in circumpolar regions, she told The Guardian. There's no question Arctic people are now showing symptoms of anxiety, ecological grief, and even post-traumatic stress related to the effects of climate change. In the financial realms, a leading economic historian warned recently that the climate crisis could very well become the trigger for the next global financial crisis by way of causing instability and massive disruptions in the markets. You don't say. Distressingly, a recently published study warned that a new superbug, which erupted at the same time on 3 continents, may well have been brought about from warming temperatures. The study pointed out how a drug-resistant fungal disease has now been made more prevalent by existing on a warming planet. A recent report from Canada warned that British Columbia could see catastrophic consequences from climate disruption-related events in the next 3 decades. These include more severe wildfire seasons, increasingly intense and longer heat waves, water shortages, and storm surges across the province. Speaking of Canada, that country's pediatric society recently warned that children's health is expected to be increasingly negatively affected by climate disruption impacts, including things like air pollution and heat stress. Not to mention, what do you think the mental health impacts will be of climate change for children? You can only hide what's happening for so long, and kids are already way more savvy than we think. Water. Drought-induced blackouts are now besetting the people of Zimbabwe, where some places are seeing 18 hours per day without electricity. Imagine that in the summer heat. Dams providing hydropower lack water. Power blackouts are spreading. I wonder how widespread, and this is just a serious question, I wonder how widespread air conditioning is in Zimbabwe. In Harare, Zimbabwe's capital city, the taps have run dry, affecting more than 2 million people who have been trying to cope with not having access to municipal drinking water. In India, a stunning 1 million people were displaced and at least 270 killed by severe flooding from heavier than usual monsoon rains. Back in the U.S., New York City's summer has served as a preview of things to come as an extreme heat wave coupled with flash flooding beset the iconic city. On the other end of the water spectrum, a recent study published in Science Advances warned that megadroughts will likely beset the U.S. Southwest within decades. The study stated that the megadroughts are almost assured and will be on a scale not seen since medieval times. At the same time, by 2050, another report warned that snow droughts will become far more common across the western U.S., if we're not already seeing that right now. This is critical in that it compounds the aforementioned impending drought crisis, as mountain snowpack is vital to providing water into the spring and summer. A recent and critically important study showed that 1/4 of the total global population across 17 countries is already affected by extreme water stress. Lebanon, Qatar, and Israel-Palestine top a list of places with the worst water shortages as the growing climate crisis threatens more day zeros, days where major cities will literally run out of water. Meanwhile, sea levels continue their inevitable and accelerating rise. In the U.S., a recent report showed how 21 beach towns, including Miami Beach, Galveston, Atlantic City, and Key West, will soon be underwater. Speaking of Galveston, the state of Texas is looking toward Dutch expertise for assistance on how to construct what would be the nation's most expensive and most ambitious coastal barrier for protection against intensifying hurricanes. The Netherlands has been devising ways to protect massive parts of its low-lying country against the ocean for centuries. Now the skills it has cultivated are soberingly, increasingly relevant worldwide. Meanwhile, the oceans continue to warm as they absorb the brunt of the heat human activity is adding to the atmosphere. What do you think the cost would be for creating barriers, ocean barriers, for all the low-lying cities about to be inundated by sea level rise? And how many of them are going to be able to actually afford and complete the construction? I wonder. Meanwhile, the oceans continue to warm as they absorb the brunt of the heat human activity is adding to the atmosphere, and the warming waters are literally pushing Pacific salmon to the brink of their ability to survive, according to another report. Distressingly, a recently published study showed that unexpected marine heat waves are now becoming the norm rather than the exception. Alpine mountaineering routes are disintegrating as glaciers and ice fields melt in the Alps. The ice-reliant climbing routes in the mountains are tumbling down and melting away faster than anyone expected. Greenland experienced a record heat wave in the middle of this summer, which dramatically accelerated the melting of the ice sheet, meaning its contributions to sea level rise are in the process of accelerating as well. Meanwhile, scientists have expressed alarm and shock about the fact that the permafrost across the Canadian Arctic is thawing out 70 years sooner than previously predicted. That's a lot sooner, especially if, 70 years was supposed to be 2100, and now 70 years is 2030. Gosh. That's pretty soon. Things are so dire in the icy realms of the earth that the country of Iceland is now preparing for how it will cope without any more ice, something that country relies upon for its identity, businesses, government, and very existence. Fire. These stunning satellite photos show an Arctic burning up in front of our eyes. In Alaska alone, at the time of this writing, at least 1.6 million acres have burned from at least 100 wildfires this summer. Wildfires in Siberia could well burn into October when the first snow falls, as at least 6.7 million acres have burned across Russia. Another report showed that due to climate disruption, wildfires in California have already become 500% larger than they were in the 1970s. Canadian media are reporting that forests have been scorched in the Pacific Northwest are not growing back as expected. This brings into question numerous species of trees' ability to regenerate as the fires get increasingly hot, burn longer, and scorch longer areas. At the same time, another report reaffirmed the fact that even the rainy Northwest is now facing the inevitable increased risk of wildfires due to higher temperatures, increasing drought, and lower humidity. By 2050, Florida will have more days that feel like 100 degrees Fahrenheit than any other state in the U.S., according to a recent study. Washington, D.C. currently averages 1 week per year of 100-degree days, while by 2050 that could rise to 2 months. The same study warned that climate disruption will expose millions of people across the U.S. to off-the-charts extreme heat. Are you noticing that the dates aren't saying 2100 anymore? A lot of the dates are saying 2050 is the time when we'll see this the extreme effects of global warming. And, how soon until they move those dates up to 2030 or 2035. Meanwhile, Europe sizzled under a record-breaking heat wave this summer as heat from the Sahara baked the continent and temperature records toppled en masse. There are far too many records to name from that heat wave, but notable was the fact that Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands recorded their highest temperatures ever during Europe's second major summer heat wave. In Canada, the far northern community of Nunavut saw warmer temperatures than the city of Victoria far to its south. According to CBC News, the source of the Arctic beach weather is a large current of air that somehow found its way north from the U.S. southeast, a much more common occurrence as warming intensifies and as the jet stream collapses. You're going to have warm air just moving up into the Arctic and Arctic air moving down south. That's why you are seeing these extreme weather events. Those who know already know this. Denial and reality. Ever busy denying the crisis, in the last month, the Trump administration buried a large climate disruption response plan, as revealed by Politico. The outlet revealed how the Agriculture Department prevented the release of an already completed and sweeping plan about how the government should best respond to the climate crisis. Meanwhile, in what could have been a slip of the tongue, Trump's Energy Secretary Rick Perry said during a recent nationally televised interview, "The climate is changing. Are we part of the reason? Yeah, it is. I'll let people debate on who's the bigger problem here." Okay. So he's saying we are the problem? It's not just the Trump administration that's fueling denial. It was also revealed how DNC chair Tom Perez introduced a resolution in an attempt to kill a climate debate among the Democratic presidential candidates. Don't be fooled. The Democratic Party elites, establishment, do not want you to talk about climate change just as much as Republicans don't want you to talk about climate change. Why? Because it challenges or impinges on their donors' ability to continue business as usual. Nevertheless, reality has a way of not going away despite human efforts at denial. A recent report showed that the climate crisis is already well along in causing childhood deaths and the stunting of growth in Australia and across the Pacific. Other impacts on kids include lowered cognitive capacity and a higher susceptibility to the spread of diseases. And to keep all of this in perspective, as a final reality check, the burning of fossil fuels reached an all-time record last year, according to oil giant BP. For perspective on the rate of acceleration now baked into the system, half of all fossil fuels used by humans have been burned since just 1990. Many more consequences are lurking just around the corner. So more than half have been burned in the last 30 years than in the previous 100 and whatever it was, 130 or 200 years, whatever you want to call it, the length of the start of the Industrial Revolution. Some people put it at 1750. Other people put it at, 1880. I don't know. There are different dates. Many more consequences are lurking just around the corner. It takes at least 10 years before we begin to see the impacts of the CO2 once the fuels are burned. As always, Jamail giving a very stark and fact-based outlook on where we are at. He mostly cites studies that, talk about the effects of things happening in 2100, and now many of them have switched to 2050. 2100 being seen more and more as just a ridiculous notion that we're going to, we're not going to feel any effects until 80 years from now. Most of the scientific community cannot keep that ruse up for much longer, so everybody's switching their dates now to 2050, which is not a good sign because that's 50 years sooner, and that's not very far away. And when the timelines get even sooner than that, then people start wondering what the hell to do. That's all I have for you in this video. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the link